Whether the team giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. Celebrate! Your Washington Commanders are now 2-1 on the season after a 41-24 drubbing of the Las Vegas Raiders. It is Victory Monday. I am in my Victory Monday attire. This feels good. Last week was miserable, and I was looking to get that whole ordeal past us, behind us, in the rearview mirror, and get back to our winning ways. This felt like last year. This felt like a team that was on a mission, and I talked about that on Friday. I said that this team was pissed off. They were ornery, and I think I talked about it last Thursday, actually, with Joe Witt Jr. in his press conference, and I said they're going to come out and they're going to be pissed off, and they're going to take it out on somebody, and the Raiders are at the wrong place at the wrong time. Somebody's got to pay for what happened on Thursday night, and it's unfortunately going to have to be the Las Vegas Raiders. And that's what happened. This was a three-phase ass whooping, total domination in every sense of the word. The only thing that kept the Raiders in the game were early mistakes by the Commanders, a Mariota fumble when they were driving for more points, and a Jalen Lane drop in the end zone, followed by a Matt Gay missed field goal. That is the only thing that stopped this from being a 50-burger and a game that was never close. This was a 10-10 ball game. You forget very quickly that we were in a dogfight right before halftime, before the big 60-yard Jeremy McNichols run, and then the field goal late in the half that ended up giving us an iconic shot of DQ with the arm raised as he's bleeding from his nose after being run over by Marcus Mariota right before the half, and the Matt Gay field goal that preceded his excitement. So this was a game that I think restored a lot of confidence in some of the fans. Not all of us were feeling, we're in the depths of despair like some were after the Green Bay game. We know that this roster is far from a perfect product. We know that this roster is not going to be one of the better ones in the league, but it's better than it was last year. And yes, the injuries are a concern. We will talk about them. Those are something that those are real. Like, that's not something that we're going to just sweep under the rug or ignore. And we came out of this game a little banged up again, just like we did after the Green Bay game. We lost another player probably for the entire year, but they did make a move to combat that and try to circumvent that particular injury. We will find out more about the injuries on Wednesday when DQ steps to the mic for the first time heading into week 4 in our contest versus the Atlanta Falcons. We also learned more about the Brandon Coleman situation. We were talking about this yesterday, and a lot of you gave me what DQ said during the post-game show. So we did talk about it a little bit yesterday, but we're going to talk about it even more today. But before we do any of that, as we always like to do here, we get to the keys from yesterday's game and what the team did and whether or not they were able to get some things done. These are keys I handcraft every week based on the opponent, try to get us a dub. And this was one of those games where I felt like it was clear and obvious what needed to happen, and we just needed to take care of business, and that we did. So really excited about what was done in this game. And it's just crazy because they were really, really good in this game, taking care of business. And golly. All right. So let's get to the keys and let's talk about them real quick. So offensive keys. The first one was establish the run early and often and have 170 yards on the ground or more and at least one touchdown. And I thought we came out after the Deebo Samuel, massive return, giving us great field position. We rammed it right down their throat, basically. It was C-Rod, C-Rod, C-Rod. And then I think we got down inside the 5, and then you had Marcus Mariota finish it off with a scramble for a touchdown. So we ran for over 200 yards. So we check on the 170. We had Bill score a rushing touchdown. We had J-Mac score a rushing touchdown. We had Marcus Mariota score a rushing touchdown. So that's 3 rushing touchdowns right there. So I only asked for one and 170. We got 203 rushing touchdowns. So absolutely check mark. They killed that one, knocked it out of the box. I knew we could establish the run game against them because, as I mentioned, I felt like we could dominate both lines of scrimmages, and that we did. The next offensive key, neutralize Mad Max and locate Palomau, the safety. I thought we did a great job of neutralizing both of those guys. We didn't hear Palomau's name at all in the game. Mad Max did have a sack, but it was late in the game. You know, it was inconsequential. It had no impact on the game whatsoever. We neutralized him. He did draw a couple of holding penalties. That's what he does because of his energy and his relentless pursuit. However, we minimized his impact on this game to next to nothing. So proud of them. And I remember after the game, somebody said, "Oh man, Josh Conley Jr. stinks. You know, when are we gonna get him out of there and start Wiley and this, that, and the third?" I was like, I don't know what game you were watching, but I myself felt like that was his best game of his career to this point. DQ actually said the same exact thing. We'll talk about what was said about him later on in the show. But I thought that we did a really good job neutralizing Mad Max and Palomau. So big check mark there as well. Next one, tempo and convert on third downs. And I wanted to start fast in this game. I said I wanted 50% on third downs. We were one of the worst third down conversion rate teams in the league through the first 2 weeks coming into this game. We were converting at 33.3%. Going into the game. That's not us. That's not who we are. We converted over 46% of our third downs last year, almost 50% on the season. We were right behind Tampa Bay, who was the best in the league. I think we were like third in the league in third down conversion rate last year during the regular season. And that's not us. The 33% didn't allow us to get into a rhythm. It didn't allow us to get to our tempo. It didn't allow us to do the things that we were accustomed to seeing this offense do. And I thought we got back to that. I wanted 50%. I said maybe 50 is a little bit aggressive, but I know we're capable. I said 7 of 14. We were 5 of 10. So we didn't have as many attempts on third downs, but we converted that 50% that I was looking for, 5 of 10 on the day. So I knew this team could do it. I knew they could get 50%. That was the goal. That's what I was aiming for them to get, and they got to it. So, and we started fast in the game. Obviously, you can't start any faster than the Deebo Samuel return unless you run it all the way back for a touchdown. But we ultimately turned that big return into a touchdown, unlike against Green Bay, where we got the big return to start second half and got no points out of it. So started fast, and we got to that tempo. We converted on third downs. We made it count in this game. Another check mark for the offense. Last thing on the offensive keys was get Terry going, no less than 70 yards receiving, and score 27 points or more in the game, right? Again, this felt like Cleveland. This felt like Carolina. This felt like Tennessee. It felt like one of those games at home where you needed to dominate, and Terry needed to be a part of that. And I said 70 yards or more in this game. Nothing less than 70 would do for me. Terry had 74 yards on 3 catches. Again, I said, I don't care how the catches look. Although I would not be happy with 11 catches for 74 yards, still, I didn't care what it looked like. And we know that's not normally how Terry gets down. If he has 70 yards, it's usually one big one in there somewhere. And it should have been a touchdown. He got robbed, but that's nor here nor there. I got my 70 yards from Terry. I said 27 points or more. We got 41 points on the day. This was everything that I imagined and envisioned it could be. Wasn't sure if it would be, but I imagined and envisioned it could be. Shout out to the fellas for going out and executing the offensive keys to a T. Got all of those checked off. All 4 points that were available were had by the offense. They were phenomenal as you go to the defensive keys. And we start with stop the run and slow down Brock Bowers. I said no more than 8 catches for 70 yards. Brock Bowers, I think, had 4 catches for 30 or 40 something yards in the game. Whatever it was meager. It was, again, it had little to no impact on the game. Shout out to Will Harris for the pass breakup in the end zone. We really didn't have a Brock Bowers problem. And I was talking to my Raiders buddy, and he was like, he got that big bulky brace on his knee. It's not the same Brock. I'm like, good. We're glad we got him out of the way before he sheds that brace and turns back into the big beast that is Brock Bowers. But I'll take the 4 for 36 or the 4 for 42 or whatever the hell the number was for him. it was, like I said, not a big deal for us. We held him down. He didn't make any big plays in this game. And we stopped the run. The Raiders rushed the football almost 30 times, didn't hit the century mark in yards. None of their rushers averaged over 4 yards a pop. Them as a team did not average 4 yards a carry. And so I'm continued to be really excited about this run defense. I feel like we have one of the better run defenses in football right now as constructed. Obviously, we have to stay healthy, but if we can do that, I'll take Javon Kinlaw and Daron Payne and Von Miller and Eddie Goldman and Johnny Newton and Dorrance Armstrong and Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner and Javonte John Baptiste, and when he gets into the mix, Preston Smith. And I'll take all of these guys that have come in here and played stout football up front against anybody's run defense in the league to this point. I think these guys are playing exceptional football at the point of attack, getting to the ball carrier, swarming to the football, and getting guys on the ground. Check mark there for the run defense and slowing down Brock Bowers. No explosive plays and buckle down in the red zone, no better than 50%. Now, they did have the big Trey Tucker play late in the game. That's a little bit frustrating for me and a bit annoying. But I credit that to the secondary at that point of the game being, decimated. We had both starting corners out. You had 2 safeties down. You were down to Antonio Hamilton Sr. and Tyler Owens being in the game by that juncture of the game. So I almost want to disregard that, but I can't. It did happen. So I do have to acknowledge that. But the Raiders were 3 of 14 on third downs. The Raiders were 2 of 3 in the red zone. So they exceeded what I wanted them to do in the red zone. Still, it was a really good effort from this defense. I gave us half credit for that one. They didn't quite hit the marks there, but that's the 3rd game in a row that we were able to get at least one red zone stop. All right. No team has gone 100% in the red zone against us. Obviously, the Giants, 0% in that game. And the Packers last week had one missed opportunity in the red zone. We forced them to settle for a field goal. And here with the Raiders, we were able to get a stop and force them to settle for a field goal. And because of the Raiders going 3 of 14 on third downs, the Commanders, we came into the game with the 4th best third down defense in the NFL. After the Raiders going 3 of 14 on third downs, the Commanders are now the number 1 third down defense in the National Football League. This is what happens when you do your work early. This is what happens when you stop the run on 1st and 2nd down, when teams try to run the football and you force them into those long down and distances, whether they try to run it on 1st down and they get a yard, or they lose 2 yards and it's 2nd and 12 or it's 2nd and 9. Now they have to throw the football. If they dare run it again and they want to lose another yard or lose 2 yards or gain a yard or 2, and it's going to be 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11. That's what we've done so well. We've won the early downs, and sometimes teams help us out with a penalty, right? A holding penalty, a legal man downfield, hands to the face, what may have you. We take advantage of those things too, and we get off the field on third downs. We've done a masterful job of doing that to this point. It doesn't hurt that you played Geno Smith in the Vegas Raiders and Russell Wilson in the New York Giants in 2 out of the 3 games either. That doesn't hurt, right? However, this defense has been really good, and I've been pleased with what they've done on early downs and then closing the show on third downs. We may not be forcing any turnovers, but we're doing the next best thing, and that's getting teams off the field on third downs. The next defensive key: get to Geno and fluster him and create at least one turnover. So, of course, we did not create the turnover. We were this close. My rook almost had a pick. Trey Amos, he jumped the route, he bobbled it, and here comes Will Harris out of nowhere like, oh, shit. Homie, you about to get a pick? Let me get some of that shit. Now they start fighting over the goddamn football. I'm like, Will, get your ass out the way. The rook is about to pick this bitch off. He comes over there, stumbling, bumbling, and messes the whole shit up. Like, goddamn, we don't like nice things. We can't even pick some shit. Geno's trying to do Geno Smith type stuff. He's trying to share. And we like, nah, we good, Gino, man. We appreciate the offering, though. We really do. We really appreciate your gratitude and your generosity, but we're good, man. Maybe some other time. So the Rook almost got his hands on one. Will Harris came and effed it up. But again, the third down work was so beautiful that I got to give them credit for that. 3 of 14, you're going to win a lot of games forcing teams to 3 of 14 on third downs, right? And then I talked about sacking Geno Smith. I said I wanted 3 or 4 sacks. I said I really want 4 because I really truly feel like we can dominate this Raiders offensive line. What I had seen in the first 2 weeks, I felt like this front that we have could dominate them up front because I felt like our front is better than the Chargers front, especially without Khalil Mack. And I feel like our front is better than the Patriots front they saw in week 1. And those two teams dominated the Raiders up front. So I said, if those two teams can do that, I think we can do a much better job of getting to Geno Smith than those two teams did. And in fact, we did. 5 sacks of Geno Smith. And all of us watched the game and said it easily could have been 10. Right? He just somehow found a way to get away from the clutches and grasp of Von Miller, and Dorrance Armstrong had him at least 2 or 3 different times. And he just kept getting away. I was so pissed because I'm like, man, we could have had 8 or 9 sacks. This could have been like that first game of the 2020 season when we sacked Carson Wentz like 8, 9 times in that game. This felt like it could have been one of those games, but we just couldn't get. And the part that was really frustrating is a number of those times where we had him in the grasp and we couldn't corral him. He ended up rolling out and finding somebody on a 3rd down and long. Like, though, it's the 3 of 14, 2 or all 3, one or the other, were plays where Geno got away from a sack and extended the play and found somebody standing right by the sticks and threw a ball to him, and they were able to catch it and get the first down. Like, these weren't clean and easy 3rd down conversions. So frustrating from that standpoint, but love the dominant fashion in which we took care of business in the trenches on the defensive side. We took care of business there, and that's a check. Even though we did not force that turnover, that elusive turnover, it's still a myth around these parts, right? It's still a fable that we pass down from generation to generation, but they did dominate up front. And then lastly, dominate specials and Matt Gay straighten up. So I gave us a full check here. Hear me out. Matt Gay's got 2 jobs to do on the field every week. Kickoffs, make sure you kick the ball in the field of play and in the landing zone. I don't want touchbacks, and I don't want the ball going to the 40-yard line. I do think the opening kickoff, if I'm not mistaken, after we scored the touchdown, I think he kicked that bitch out of bounds. So as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, he did F that up too. He did miss a kick, obviously, to start the game off, his first kick. And then he tried to miss the one before halftime, but the Raiders did him a huge solid by giving him a free swing. And he got the miss out of his system, and then he drilled it from 56 right before half, which was a big play. So as much as I want to kill the Matt Gay portion of this, the rest of the special teams was just too damn good to allow Matt Gay to drag it down. When you have a kickoff return to start the game that's roughly 60 yards, when you have a 90-yard punt return, which ties the longest punt return in franchise history, and the first punt return for a touchdown you've had since 2016, when you cover kicks the way that we did throughout the entire day, when you do the things that we did on special teams, we almost broke another punt return, did Jalen Lane. Like, Jalen Lane almost broke another one. You can't help but just revel in what the special teams is and has been this season. I went into the game saying that the strongest part of our team right now is special teams outside of Matt Gay. And I've continued to say, outside of Matt Gay, outside of place kicking, you can't find a better special teams unit in the league than what we're putting on the field and what we're producing on a weekly basis. We're stopping teams from getting to the 30 most kickoffs. Tressway is kicking at a very high level right now. Another punt down to inside the 10-yard line in this game, right? We're tackling guys when we get down there on special teams, whether it's punt or kickoff. Our coverage units have been fantastic. Now, we did have a block. We did get blocked in week 1. So I do need to make sure I throw that out there, that Ben Sinnott got manhandled in week one, and we did have one block, but this unit has been spectacular. And I'll put it up against anybody's, special teams. When you take the totality of it, again, the only thing that is stopping this thing from being straight up elite is place kicking. If we had a really good field goal kicker, I'd put our special teams up against anybody's right now. They're that good, right? So, I gave us a full check, man. You get a 90-yard punt return for a touchdown, another big return on a kickoff. You down punts inside the 10-yard line. You're down there tackling anything that moves that has the football. When you do what we've done on special teams this season and repeated it again in this game, I gotta show some love. So ultimately, when you tally up all the keys to the game, 7.5 out of 8 total points possible. We dominated the game, all 3 phases. This was a total ass whooping, and it was really total dominance in all 3 phases. Complimentary football, as DQ alluded to last week, and it was so fun to see it all come together. So that was so much fun. I want to do it again. 40 burgers for everybody last night. We had a time, and I'm looking forward to doing it again at some point again this season. So with that said, let's move on to in other news. We heard from DQ today, had a number of things to say. We're going to talk about his press conference and what he said, because he said a lot of interesting things today on his Victory Monday presser. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the snap counts, and let's talk about the newest addition to the Washington Commanders. So today, the Washington Commanders signed safety, veteran safety Darnell Savage. Now, if you remember, Darnell Savage, who in 2019 was a first-round pick of the Green Bay Packers, out of Maryland. So a lot of you are very familiar with his game because a lot of you are Terp fans. I am not, but I remember that draft like it was yesterday, because that was the draft in which we ended up taking Dwayne Haskins and Montez Sweat. And Darnell Savage was in the mix as a guy that they really liked in that 2019 draft. He ended up going in the first round. He was solid in Green Bay, never great per se, but he was good. I don't know if he ever lived up to the first round billing there. Ended up in Jacksonville. They just released him. And I think now the Commanders, with all of the injuries to the safety position, Will Harris going down for the season. Remember, Percy Butler left the game with a hip injury, did not return. We don't know the status there. We don't know the severity of it, but just all of those injuries prompted them to do something. So they go out, they sign Darnell Savage today. He's a part of the group now. He'll be at practice on Wednesday, and we'll see what he can contribute right away, right? Because we need the depth right away. As far as what they did, because again, we have a full roster. We got all 70 spots occupied. You got to make some move corresponding to that move in order to free up a roster spot. And in a corresponding move, as you see here, safety Will Harris was placed on IR. Now, DQ said that they will try to get him back at some point potentially, but it doesn't feel like this is short-term IR. This is not the 4-week IR. This feels like the rest of the season IR. You know, when you break your fibula, you fracture your fibula, you're probably done for the season. He may be able to come back, but keep in mind, they signed Will Harris to a 2-year deal. So even if he doesn't come back this year, he's still under contract for next year. Now, whether he's here next year or not, whether they can get out of the contract or not, that's a whole different issue for another day. But DQ hinted at the prospects of him potentially returning at some point this season. We'll see if that gets done or not. I don't see it happening, but then again, I'm not a doctor, and I did not sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. So let's look at these snap counts. This is a really interesting snap count situation, or at least I think it is. I haven't looked at them yet, right? Every time we look at snap counts, my first time looking at them is when we look at them together on the show. So what I found interesting during the game as I was watching it live is that Debo didn't play the fourth quarter. Terry didn't play the fourth quarter. And I want to see how close are the backup, the Chris Moores, the Luke McCaffreys, the Jalen Lanes are in snaps to Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, and some of the guys that we lean on heavily at the receiver position. I want to see how close they are in snaps, because Debo, there was nothing wrong with Debo. He just didn't play in the fourth quarter. And I felt like they had the game in hand and they didn't need him out there. So I want to see what the snap count looks like for some of our starters. I want to see what the running back snap counts look like because Chris Rodriguez had the most carries. That doesn't mean he had the most snaps, but it feels like J-Mac and C-Rod were out there just as much, if not more, than Ja'Cory was. So I want to see all of these things. I think there are a lot of interesting dynamics here. So let's take a look at this. So offensive line, everybody played all 58 snaps, Mariota included. So that's the way that's supposed to go. 5 offensive linemen in your quarterback. So 6 guys should have 58 snaps. They all do. McLaurin, as he usually does, led all non-offensive linemen and quarterbacks with 35 snaps, which is interesting because, again, he left the game with a quad. I'm hoping that it was just like precautionary, like, okay, it might have just tightened up on him a little bit. And they was like, bro, don't worry about it. We got this shit. Because Terry ran over and got the football. Like that was the first time where I started to think to myself, Terry might be fine because if you're hurt, you're not jogging over to go get Luke McCaffrey's touchdown ball after he dropped it and jumped into the stands. You know, Terry's the collector. And he jogged over there, went and got it, and jogged back over. So he didn't seem like he was nursing anything that was too severe. Another thing, Marshawn Lattimore, he came back to the bench after he went to be evaluated for his concussion. He joined his teammates on the side. If you have a concussion and you're in the protocol, you don't come back to the sideline to join your teammates. So a lot of these injuries, I found out last night, they weren't as significant as, you know, like we didn't know the significance of them. But they weren't as serious as we might have started to, you know, make them in our head. Like, oh my God, we got all these injuries, you know, but we still need to await DQ's follow up on these injuries, you know. But he did tell us about Marshawn Lattimore today, gave us some clarity there. And then we'll get the rest of, you know, the injury statuses on Wednesday. But Terry's still playing more snaps than anybody else. Any other skill player is a good sign, in my mind, at least. Ben Sinnott, 33 snaps. That might be a career high for him. You got to go back to his early, you know, rookie season last year, like the first maybe 4 weeks or so. He was playing I felt like a high volume of snaps. I don't know if he's ever played over 30 though. That's pretty significant. And I said this during the show yesterday. He blocked his ass off yesterday. I don't know if you guys peep game. He's blocking the shit out of some dudes. And DQ pretty much confirmed that today. Chris Moore, 33 snaps for a guy that we wanted to run the hell out of town. I've already, you know, said my piece. I've already apologized to him. But 33 snaps for Chris Moore. And he caught the football again yesterday. Look at Chris Moore. Zach Ertz, 30 snaps, a quiet 30 for Zach. You know, he's a lot louder when Jaden's in the lineup, but quiet 30 for Zach. 25 for Debo. It felt like 25 snaps for Debo. He felt impactful early in the game after his kick return. And then he had a couple of runs, like 3 runs early on that first possession. And then it's like he just went away. I don't even know if he had a catch in the game. It's like he went away after that. Bill, 23 carries. C-Rod, 22. So he had more carries than C-Rod, and McNichols only had 15. So Bill led the pack with the amount of carries. That's a good sign. Luke McCaffrey, 21 reps. Colson Yankoff, 20. Trent Scott got out there for 19 reps on the offensive line. So that means when we were running the football, we just put an extra offensive lineman on the field. That's a lot of snaps for Trent Scott. But McNichols, 15 snaps, and Jalen Lane, 14. So interesting snap distribution here with no John Bates, with no Noah Brown, with no Austin Eckler. It was interesting to see how they would divvy all of that up. We'll see how that looks moving forward. I think Bill has now taken the lead. He had the most snaps. And again, they're not counting snaps during the game. It's not like they say, hey, let's make sure Bill has one more snap than C-Rod. Obviously, if C-Rod scores the touchdown, Bill doesn't get another snap, right? And he doesn't score the touchdown. But C-Rod didn't get in the end zone, so they put Bill in there, and Bill got in. So they're not counting snaps. But it's cool to see him have one more than C-Rod, and we'll see if that number starts to widen as the weeks pass. DQ gave Bill some love on pass protection, which was one of the reasons why they claimed he wasn't in the game a ton against Green Bay. So, if he continues to develop in that way, I don't see why this number won't grow and continue to increase as the weeks continue to progress. Let's get to the defensive side. So 66 total snaps on the defensive side of the football. Quan Martin, Bobby Wagner, and Mikey Sainristil all played 100% of the snaps. Usually we get both safeties. Will Harris would have been up there, and Frankie usually is up there. But Frankie, as you can see, only played 60. And I think I saw late in the game, Jordan McGee make a tackle on like a little swing route into the flats. So McGee was out there for those 6 snaps, and he was out there for Frankie Louvu. So I did see that. So I'm not surprised that Frankie did not play the entire game. Jeremy Reeves, Javon Kinlaw both played 46. There's a lot of snaps for Javon Kinlaw. Good to see him be able to handle a 70% workload. I think that's the most that any defensive lineman has played this season in terms of the percentage. Now, we've played a lot more snaps in other games, mainly the Green Bay game. We played a lot more defensive snaps in that game, but 70%, I don't think I've seen any defensive lineman. Normally, Deron Payne leads the way with the most defensive snaps played, but it was Kinlaw this game. Marshawn Lattimore, 44 snaps. Obviously, he left the game with the concussion and did not return. Deron Payne, 43 snaps. Dorrance Armstrong, 39. Trey Amos, 36. Obviously, he left the game with the calf, but did not return. Von Miller, 29. Noah Igbenogany, 28. He had to play a lot more due to the injuries to the 2 corners. Jacob Martin, 25. So Von saw an uptick because for the first 2 weeks, Von and Jacob had played the exact same amount of reps. So Von stayed in there a little bit more, probably due to the injury to Dietrich Wise. They upped Von Miller's count a little bit more. Will Harris obviously would have been up there in the 60s with Quan, Bobby, and Mikey, but he got hurt and did not return. And we know his season is more likely than not done with 23 snaps. Johnny Newton, 21. I thought he was very productive in his 21 snaps. Javonte John Baptiste, 20 snaps. He got a sack yesterday, so good for him. Tyler Owens played a lot more snaps due to all the injuries, the 2 safety injuries, and because they had to shuffle the deck at the cornerback position, he got some snaps at nickel. So they were doing a lot with Tyler Owens yesterday. And that's what they talk about, cross-training and, putting guys in certain positions. Remember, they put Tyler Owens in the summertime at the nickel to see if he could do it, and he had to get out there on Sunday. So Eddie Goldman, 18 snaps. He was really good in his 18 snaps as well. Jordan McGee, 6 snaps. Antonio Hamilton had to get out there due to the injuries for 5 snaps. And Percy played 1 snap. And as we know, he left the game with a hip injury, and he also did not return to the game. So we got a number of guys that we have to check on. We'll figure out what's going on with all these guys and the severity of their injuries. We're going to have a probably pretty significant and substantial injury report on Wednesday when that thing comes out. I'm going to assume that thing's going to be at least 10 to 12 guys long. Just when you add in all of the guys that are going to get vet rest days, I imagine it's going to get up to at least 10 to 12 names. Then once you get those guys off of it that aren't really hurt, I think it'll be reduced down somewhere in that 9 to 7 range. But it's going to be pretty substantial on Wednesday. We do know that. So let's get to what DQ had to say. And he started off his press conference today, his Victory Monday presser, with complimentary football. Like, he talked so much about it last week, and he talked about defense helping out special teams helping out the offense, vice versa, special teams helping out the defense helping out the offense, and all of this kind of working together. And we saw it kind of at the end of the first half, how you take a 10-10 ball game, turn it into a 20-10 ball game, that balloons to a 27-10 ball game, that ultimately gets to a 34-10 ball game. That's all because of complementary football, right? Then he started to single out names, right? He started to single out some names of guys that he thought had strong performances in week number 3. He listed J-Mac, who we know was outstanding. It was his play, the 60-yarder, when the Raiders were probably at their most confident in this game. When this thing was knotted up at 10 and Geno had just thrown the touchdown pass to Trey Tucker, and they had knotted this game up at 10, latter stages of the second quarter, they're feeling good about themselves. They get the ball to start the second half. They're like, hell yeah, if we can get a stop, we can get the ball back one more time, maybe go down and get some more points and get the ball after halftime. Who knows what this could turn into? And Jeremy McNichols rips off the 60-yard run, restores order. And from that point forward, we never really look back. We get a stop after that, get the ball back to the offense, and ultimately get the field goal before halftime. So again, that's that complementary football. Then come out of the second half break, get a stop defensively, a couple of stops defensively, and then force the punt. And the special teams jumps in to the fray, gets it done with the 90-yard punt return for the touchdown. And again, then we're off and we're running. So J-Mac was huge. He talked about Ben Sinnott. He said this was his best game as a blocker in his young NFL career. Ben Sinnott, I told y'all yesterday, just off first blush, I haven't watched the film. We were live. We were eating 40 burgers. But I said, hey, Ben Sinnott was blocking his ass off today. Okay, he's blocking his face off. Yeah, he ain't John Bates. And there aren't many that are. But for what we asked him to do, he was whooping some ass yesterday. And DQ basically said, yeah, no, Ben Sinnott was on one yesterday. He singled out Payne and Kinlaw as two guys that were excellent yesterday. Payne was so good yesterday. Kinlaw has been good every week. Payne was so good yesterday. So good. I haven't seen him shed blocks like this since 2022. I haven't seen him shed blocks like this since 2022. Like, he's throwing guys out of the way. He's doing a great job of two-gapping, right? He's standing the dude up, and he's peeking on both sides, and whatever way that running back decides to go, he discards, and he gets to the running back. This shit's a thing of beauty. I haven't seen him do that since 2022. Like, this consistently, I haven't seen it. And then he named Debo and Lane because of what they did on special teams, both of them giving us a spark there. Then he talked about Will Harris on IR with a broken fibula. He kind of, hinted at him potentially coming back. I don't think he's coming back this season. But then again, I didn't think Jonathan Allen was coming back last year when he tore his pec. So, when you get hurt early in the season, you have your procedure, you just never know. Will Harris could be back later on in the season. We'll see. Then he talked about the team signing Darnell Savage, and I want to just take a moment to talk about Darnell Savage and what he brings to the table. So DQ really didn't get into a ton of details on Darnell Savage or what his role is going to be, because he just got here and they don't really know. They like their safety room prior to all these injuries. But here's what I can tell you about Darnell Savage. This guy's got a ton of speed, and he talked about what we're going to miss from Will Harris. Will Harris had coverage ability. We saw it on the play to Brock Bowers where he was right there with him. He didn't turn and locate, but he did, stick his hand right in between Brock Bowers' hands as he tried to go and get the football and was able to get the pass breakup. Darnell Savage is another guy that can offer you some coverage ability. He's a tremendous athlete, really, really fast is Darnell Savage. Not afraid to hit. That's not necessarily his strong suit, though. Will Harris would come up and hit. Darnell Savage, not as physical of a player, but he's not afraid to get in the mix. He's a much better ball hawk, however, than Will Harris is. He will attack the football. If you make a mistake around Darnell Savage, he will make you pay for that. So we are getting a guy that will add a ball hawking element to this secondary, something that we really, truly do lack. He's a guy also that has some experience with Jason Simmons. Simmons was with him when he was drafted in Green Bay back in 2019. So I think that's part of the reason that he's here, is that there's a working relationship between the two of them. And so I do think this is a guy that this organization was very high on back in 2019. Obviously, these guys weren't here then, but I'm interested to see what kind of role he will play. I don't expect him to come in here and, unlike a Preston Smith, who I think is going to come in here and eventually be starting, I don't think Darnell Savage is going to eventually start here. I think he's going to be a depth piece. If guys stay healthy, if Jeremy Reeves stays healthy, if some of the other guys stay healthy, I think they're going to allow those guys to play. And he'll mix in, he'll get a little bit of run, but I think they're going to give Revo and some of these other guys an opportunity to see what they can do. But Savage is going to be a part of the mix. He's going to come in here. He's going to play some special teams as well. And I'm excited to see what he adds to this room. I think he can be a guy that can take the football away a little bit. So that is going to be a welcomed addition to the safety room. Marshawn Lattimore, he also said that he cleared concussion protocol. And I figured that because he came back to the sideline during the game yesterday. And as I mentioned, if you got a concussion, you're out of sight, out of mind. You're not back on the sideline. You're not conversating with people. They're going to put you in isolation, essentially. So him coming back out on the field after he was evaluated was a sign that had this been a tight game and we needed him back out there, he would have gone back in the game. We just didn't need him to go back out there. We treated this shit like a preseason game. That brings a smile to my face. When I see how they treated Debo yesterday, Debo's over there chilling, talking to Terry. Terry's chilling. Marshawn ended up coming back over there. Like, when you see everybody on the sidelines chilling in a game that is still going on, but we got it pretty much in hand, that brings a smile to my face. Like, even when they cut it, and even though there wasn't a ton of time left, but even when they cut it to 34-24, it's just a 10-point game. They didn't panic. They didn't put anybody back in the game. They just rolled with it, and it was nice to see the offense put it away with the Lukey baby touchdown. So that was reminiscent of Cleveland, where we just kind of emptied the bench. Cleveland/Arizona, where we just was like, yeah, we got this shit. No need to. Because it didn't feel like we took anybody out of the Tennessee game, but we took people out of the Cleveland game and we took guys out of the Arizona game. So this kind of felt like that. He talked about what we would miss with Will Harris, and it was the coverage ability. He's like, when Will Harris has played some really good special teams for us, but more importantly, he said, I felt him in coverage. Like, he has been really strong in that regard. And I agree. We really lack coverage ability from the safety position. Last year with Jeremy Cheney was not very good in that regard. We got an upgrade with Will Harris there, and that's what we're probably going to miss the most. Hopefully, a guy like Darnell Savage, because you're not going to get that with Revo, right? Revo's a human heat-seeking missile, but you don't want Revo in the coverage covering anybody. So that's where a guy like Darnell Savage may, come into play, and hopefully he'll be able to kind of pick up the slack where Will Harris left off. That's probably why they didn't bring in a guy like Justin Simmons, because his coverage ability isn't great at this point of his career. He's great in zone coverage. He's great with his eyes. He's great at tracking the football, but he's not great. And, we like to play a lot of man. Like, who are we kidding? You know what Joe Witt Jr. wants to do. You need somebody that can do that. And I think they feel like Darnell Savage can be a little bit more adept at doing that. And he's younger, and he's a little bit younger. So that doesn't hurt either. He talked about Jaden's plan, and he said Jaden's day-to-day, basically, just like he was last week. He's like, Mark is playing really well, has no bearing or impact on what they decide to do with Jaden. I believe DQ when he says that. I believe that if Jaden's ready, they're going to put him out there this week. But I also do believe that in their heart of hearts, if they can steal another week, they will. And with the way Marcus played on Sunday, there's a level of comfort knowing that we don't have to, rush Jaden back at all. Even if he's ready, theoretically speaking, he could go. We don't need him to go. We can take another week, allow him to get fully healthy, and then unleash him in week 5 versus the Chargers. And so I do think if Marcus would have went out, stunk it up against the Raiders, there may have been a little bit more urgency of, hey, if Jaden can go, let's get him out there. With Marcus playing the way that he did, they're free to be like, yeah, Jaden could potentially go, but he doesn't have to. And another week would be really good for him, right? So while I believe DQ, and I take him at face value when he says the two are mutually exclusive. Like, Jaden's health and Marcus's play are two total separate entities, right? They are not intertwined with one another. Like, Jaden is, healthy enough to go, or Jaden may not be as healthy as we would like him to be, but Marcus isn't playing well. Let's get Jaden out there, or vice versa. Jaden is healthy, but Marcus is playing well, so we don't really need Jaden right now. I think if I believe Jaden's going to play this week. But then again, I thought he was going to play last week, so you can't listen to me, right? Because I thought he was going to play last week. So he was asked about the offensive efficiency. Why were they so effective? And he said we ran the ball. It's the thing that a lot of you have said over and over again. We need to run the ball. And I felt like this was going to be a big run game week. Remember when I did the skill game, I was looking for C-Rod's rushing options because I said he's going to get the ball. Bill's going to get the ball. I took McNichol's yardage. Obviously, he killed that in one carry. And I took Bill's yardage. He did not make his total. And I was looking for C-Rod's because I knew we were going to run the ball. And I took Marcus Mariota's rush totals, right? I knew this was going to be a run game type of performance. So the run game was huge. It opened up everything for us in this game. And it allowed the play action fake to really have an impact. When you rush for over 200 yards, you can have a serious impact in the pass game. And it made life so much easier for Marcus. He was asked, how did the guards play? And remember, we had two new guards in there. Andrew Wiley at right guard and Chris Paul at left guard. And he's like, look, this is an ongoing competition. He said, not to mention that we're getting closer and closer to Sam Cosmi getting back onto the field. But he's like, this is an ongoing competition. Nothing's final. Like, just because they started Chris Paul this week doesn't mean they're starting Chris Paul next week. There's no finality to anything. I will tell you this. I truly believe Andrew Wiley is your starting right guard until Sam Cosmi comes back. I don't think they're touching that. Now, left guard is up for grabs, and I do think that they sent a message to Brandon Coleman. I don't think that Coleman's the future at left guard. I still believe that. I don't think that's changed. I think they sent a message to him, though, because DQ said that the thing about Brandon Coleman, because he was later on asked about Brandon Coleman, and is it surprising that you're at this point of the season after how much he played? Brandon Coleman played in every single game last year except for one, and that was the Bears game where he missed it with a concussion. He started probably 12 games last year and played in 16 out of the 17 games in the regular season last year. And so it's surprising that he's been benched, and it has nothing to do with for health reasons. He was a healthy scratch yesterday. I think they sent him a message. Like, you got to step your game up, bro. Like, if you're not going to play better than that, if you're not going to put in the necessary work to get better, to improve, we'll get somebody else in there. And Chris Paul played well yesterday. And DQ basically said that Chris Paul did a really good job, but nothing's decided yet. And I think they want to get Brandon Coleman back out there. And I wouldn't be shocked if Brandon Coleman's starting this week against the Falcons to give him an opportunity. If he has a good week of practice, I wouldn't be shocked if he's back out there this week. But they love his athleticism too much. They want him out there. That's a young guy they drafted in the 3rd round. They want Brandon Coleman to be a part of their offensive line. But he's got to get his shit together. Like I said, he wasn't good against Green Bay. I will say that. And I tried to take it easy on him because he suffered the shoulder injury. But he wasn't good on Thursday Night Football. So I love the whole competition thing. I love them, pushing the envelope, pressing buttons to see which ones work on the offensive line. And in 2 of the 3 games, they've pressed buttons and they've worked, especially against on the ground, rather, and against the Giants and now against the Raiders. But, we'll see what they decide to do there. That was a really interesting conversation, though. He talked about Josh Connolly Jr., and he said that his performance in this game was the best of his career to this point. He said he thought he played well here and against the Giants. I concur. He did not play well against the Packers. DQ said that flat out, said he didn't play well last week, but he rebounded. And, for some people who already want to crown this kid as a bust, first of all, I abhor the B word in any player's rookie season. I hate the B word in a guy's first or second season, to be honest. But sometimes you can tell, right? You don't need a bunch of time. You can tell one way or the other. He's going to be great, or he's going to be a B word. But ultimately, I think some of you are way too harsh on this kid. And I thought he played well on Sunday. I thought he played well. And DQ confirmed that already. And I haven't watched the film. So DQ has, I haven't. But just off first blush, and I said this yesterday, you can tell when someone plays well and when they don't. You can tell when someone plays well and they don't. Because you walk away from the game like, shit, he didn't play well. Kept hearing his name, kept hearing, the guy that he was blocking's name. This wasn't good, right? That's what it was against Green Bay. It wasn't good. He was a lot better on Sunday. He talked about Colson Yankoff and Ben Sennett's performance, and he really praised Ben Sennett. Talked about him stepping up. We saw how many snaps he played, 33. I want to say that's a career high. And he did a really admirable job filling in for John Bates. And he said that it looks different. It's not what we asked Bates to do. Sennett is more on the move, when we have him blocking, but he did a phenomenal job. And that's good to know. That's comforting knowing that he can step in and hold it down if Bates isn't out there because Bates could be out for another week or two, right? Who are we kidding? When you talk about a groin, that's usually going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So Sennett may have to hold it down another 2 or 3 weeks, and it's good to know that he's capable of doing that. DQ talked about special teams, and we know how important special teams is to this group here in Washington now. They put an emphasis on special teams that I've never seen before from any group here. Even when we had Danny Smith as our special teams coordinator, we never put this much emphasis on special teams. They truly do care about that aspect of the game. They truly do treat it like offense and defense. There are a lot of places where they don't put as many resources into special teams. It's lip service. They talk about special teams and they hold it in high regard from a verbal standpoint, but their actions don't suggest that special teams means as much as they say it does. Here, you hear it, you see it, and their actions back that up. With the way that they spent money in the offseason on special teams players, rewarding them for their play, going out and getting what I think is one of the better special teams coordinators in the league in Larry Izzo last offseason, bringing him in here and going out and upgrading his staff this offseason by going and getting a guy that he felt like was one of the best assistants in terms of special teams, and bringing him onto this staff to help out Larry Izzo, and then continuing to add guys that are core special teamers, whether it's undrafted guys, drafted players, or veterans that come in here and contribute on teams. They talk about it, they live it, and you see it play itself out on Sundays. That's why that first preseason game against New England was such a shock to the senses. That's why DQ was so pissed. That's why after that game, I was like, what the hell was that? That's not my special teams. That ain't the shit I watched last year. This group is dominant. Our special teams is dominant right now, flat out. And in this league where the margins are so small and razor thin, sometimes it's winning special teams that wins you the game. And right now, every week, sans for our place kicker, he needs to get his ass in gear. Sans for Matt Gay right now. And maybe, just maybe, the 2 field goals made on Sunday gets him into a rhythm. That's all we can hope, because they're not going to bring in any competition. I hope you guys are aware of this. They're not bringing in any competition in after he made those 2 kicks. However, if he can get his act together, I'll put our special teams up against anybody's, because you're not going to out cover our coverage units. And right now, you find me a team with a kickoff and a punt return special. Not one guy like Dallas has in Turpin that can do both, right? Find me a team that has a guy that is doing kickoffs and one guy that's doing punts that are equally as dangerous, that at any moment can take one to the crib. There aren't a lot of teams that fit that bill, right? He talked about the safety shakeup, did DQ. Obviously, with the injury to Will Harris, we don't know the status of Percy Butler and his hip. But obviously, we came into the season with 5 safeties. Now you're down 2 guys, potentially, 1 for sure. You just added Darnell Savage. So there is going to be a safety shakeup. But he said, a guy like Revo has earned reps, so he's going to continue to play. He said Tyler Owens stepped up, which he got in there. I can't wait to see what he actually did, because he got in there on Sunday and played, again, 18 snaps. That's a lot of snaps for Tyler Owens. This is a man that was playing like 4 snaps a game, 4 to 6 snaps a game. So 18. You're talking about tripling the amount of snaps that this man has been playing on average going into the game. So I want to see what he did in his 18 snaps. Is he a trustworthy guy? And then, obviously they're going to end up working Darnell Savage into this mix. So, we'll see what happens. DQ was asked about his well-being. Obviously, he got shaken up yesterday, knocked down. I know you guys saw the game ball that Frankie Louvu gave him. I love that shit, man. I eat that up every single time when they got a game ball that they present to DQ or DQ breaks them down. I eat that shit up every time. And, he said, hey, I got a game ball. Coach got knocked down, but he popped up like toast, right? I love that shit. He said, game ball to DQ. Ah! Everybody went crazy. That shit was fire, man. So, love my coach. We built different over here, man. You know what I'm saying? My coach is doing a press conference with his nose bleeding and blood on his mustache, man. We built different over here. We talk it and we live it over here. I love it, man. I love this team. I love what they stand for. There's a toughness. There's a nastiness with this team that just hasn't existed here in decades, right? It's different. When you stop the run, it does something to you. When you can run the ball for over 200 yards and cancel out a team's run game and force them to less than 100 yards on less than 4 yards a carry, it does something to you. It changes your mindset and your mentality. And then your coach gets run over, hits his head, cuts his nose, bleeding on his nose and from his nose, and doesn't flinch. It does something to you, right? It's different over here. We built different over here. I love it. I love it. But he said he's feeling good. And, sometimes it's good when people feel the love. DQ felt the love. He said a lot of people called and reached out to him, texted him, checking up on him, former coaches, former players, other people within the organization, family members, etc. He said he really felt the love. That was good because he's a good dude, man. You be hard-pressed to find a guy that's more beloved around the league than DQ. So it's good that he got to feel the love too. He talked about turnovers. He said, look, man, we in a drought. We are officially in a drought, man. The streets, the product has dried up on the streets, man. we got to get a turnover, man. I was trying to will that turnover to Trey Amos. And here comes Will Harris he was like, goddamn, what's Ezel? He was like Ezel, just effing up some shit, right? What's the old girl name that came when he was about to get the money from his baby mama? Or not baby mama, his girlfriend on Friday? Felicia. When Felicia came and effed it up, hey, Craig, can I borrow your microwave? He's like, get the hell out of here. No, who is that bitch? You think you're slick. Like, that was goddamn Will Harris yesterday. Get your ass out the way and let this man pick the damn pass off, man. Shit. Anyway, we're going to get a turnover eventually. One of these days, a turnover will happen. Until it does, we're in a drought. We are officially in a recession, a turnover recession in Washington. This shit is real, man. It's hard to come by. He talked about the running back room workload. And he said, they're going to continue to work all of the guys in that running back room. He said they all bring something to the table differently, which that's true. But he said if somebody gets hot, they're going to feed them. And I believe that too. And I really believe the guy that's going to get hot is Bill. But early on in the game, it was C-Rod. And they kept feeding C-Rod. So, we'll see what they decide to do there. But I keep waiting because I think Bill's eventually going to break free of that group and he's going to separate himself. But and then he talked about the brotherhood. He finished up his press conference talking about the brotherhood. And, Mariota was so appreciative of the opportunity and how guys rallied around him. And you could tell it meant a lot to him after the game. And DQ talked about that. And he talked about, how they rallied around him. And when he got knocked down, and he's like, that's what the brotherhood is all about. And he said, and he kind of tied it into the whole offensive line conversation with them moving around the guards. And he's like, look, and I love this quote. I'm gonna steal this one. I'm gonna jack this one. And there ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm gonna use this one in my personal life. because this is so applicable right here. He said he heard this quote over the weekend and he thought it was powerful, and I agree. He said, quote, "Relationship is so strong, it bears the weight of the truth." And that shit is heavy right there, because so often people don't want to hear the truth. And somebody, like, if you're in a small circle, and I have a small circle of friends, and sometimes you got to be the one that's willing to tell the truth. Somebody in that circle's got to be the one willing to tell. And I'm always the one. I designate myself as the one that's going to tell you about your damn self. You effing up, I'm going to tell you, you effing up right now. You know, if you killing it, I'm gonna like, you killing that shit, bro. Keep killing it. And if you effing up, I'm gonna tell you, you effing up right now. And if your relationship isn't strong enough to bear the truth, then guess what? That's going to be the undoing of your relationship with that person, because they can't handle the truth, right? But if you've got a strong enough relationship where you can honestly talk to someone in that space and say, this is how I feel about this situation. This is how you're conducting yourself. This is what I need from you, and you're not giving me this right now. Or this is how you're conducting yourself, and this ain't good enough. This ain't you. And that's what DQ's able to do with these players. And you hear players all the time say, I just want a coach that's not going to bullshit me. Tell it to me straight. You know, let me know where I stand. That's all I need. And they let Brandon Coleman know where he stood on Sunday. And they let him know, this shit ain't good enough, bro. But that's the brotherhood. And now he's got to push himself to be better. Come out here and operate at a much higher level to get his damn spot back. That's what competition is all about. I love that shit. So that was DQ's presser today. It was some great stuff. We're going to get a word from one of our sponsors. We got a couple of comments to get to, and then we'll get out of here. Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN, and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. So we're going to wrap up tonight's show. We got one comment here, and then we'll get out of here. It's from my guy, Barrett Downing. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, BD, writes, yeah, Payday Payne was on it yesterday. He been on it all season, bro. I'm going to be honest with you. Him and Kinlaw inside, that's a dynamic duo, bro. They've been shutting shit down. They are wreaking havoc on the inside. I haven't seen an interior that can handle those two by themselves yet. And because of how much attention you have to pay them, or the amount of havoc they're wreaking, it's allowing guys like Dorrance Armstrong. It's allowing guys like Jacob Martin. It's allowing guys off the edge, Von Miller and such, to get active one-on-one, you know. And it's I don't know if you've noticed, Bobby Wagner's been very clean to start the season. Very clean. Whether it's a blitz, whether it's getting to a ball carrier, Bobby Wagner's been, frankly, he's been squeaky clean this season. You know why? Because up front, there's Javon Kinlaw and there's Daron Payne. And as much as I like Jonathan Allen was light, bro. He was light in the trunks. You can move Jonathan Allen off the spot. He's quick, he's agile, but he can be moved. You ain't moving Javon Kinlaw. And Payne is stout in his own right. You ain't moving these two dudes. That's what the game's been missing. You couldn't move us on the interior because Jonathan Allen was light. Johnny Newton is light. But when you put Johnny Newton next to Eddie Goldman, Johnny Newton is just fine, bro. He's just fine. He was stout yesterday too, with Johnny Newton. This D-line, this revamped D-line is the truth. And it's spearheaded right now by Payday Payne, and Javon Kinlaw. Them two dudes inside, to me, are the linchpins of what we do up front in our front seven. They're playing at a different level right now. I love it. I really do. Anyway, I digress. So, pay attention to tonight's game. I'll be live after the game, but we got Detroit on the schedule. Anytime there's a primetime game with a team that we play on the schedule, you should be very interested. All right. Last week, I told you, watch the Falcons game. We got to play the Falcons. We got the Falcons this week coming up. The Falcons stunk it up last week against the Panthers, or yesterday against the Panthers. They weren't great against the Vikings the week before. They did some good things in that game, but they didn't wow you, right? We got the Chiefs on the schedule. That's not the same Chiefs team we're going to see, but you still can gain some insight on to what the Chiefs are, right? We got the Giants again. You got the Lions on the schedule coming up here in a little bit. We watched the Bears in week 1. A lot of y'all probably watched them against the Cowboys yesterday. They're going to continue to get better and improve. They did lose Jalen Johnson for an extended period of time. He's not going to play against us. He was placed on IR. So that's a good thing. When we see them, they won't have their best defensive player, or one of their better defensive players. He probably is their best defensive player. So that's going to help. But, the Lions are on the schedule. So you should be, watching all of these teams. Cowboys are on primetime next week against Green Bay. There's a lot of storylines hovering over that game, but ultimately we play the Cowboys in 3 weeks. So we need to be doing homework on them. So every time you get an opportunity to watch a team that's on our schedule, you should be taking it full advantage. Lions are on our schedule, so you should be interested in watching that game tonight. Anyway, I always tell you this, if you're a junkie like me, this should go in one ear and out the other, but I watch these games so you don't have to. But if you're a junkie like me, you'll want to, okay? I'm not here to tell you how this shit works, but this season just started, and we're already heading into week 4 after tonight. This shit flies by. When time flies when you're having fun. So enjoy all of this. Before you know it, we'll be talking about the midpoint of the season. And you'll be like, God damn, I felt like this was just week 1. We were just playing the Giants. It happens fast. So enjoy it. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T, here on this installment, Victory Monday edition of Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. But until then, you guys enjoy Victory Monday. Mwah! It tastes so sweet. Looking forward to many more of these this season. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Peace.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone. Touchdown.